When the hotel concierge double-checked my name against the guest list, she hesitated for a second too long. "Mr. William Carter?" she asked, her voice caught between politeness and confusion. I nodded. "Ah, yes, you're seated at table 17, right this way." She led me through the grand Lexington ballroom, past towering floral arrangements, glittering crystal chandeliers, and rows of tables where tech CEOs and politicians laughed over champagne. She stopped at a small round table tucked behind a decorative column, uncomfortably close to the kitchen doors. The music was muffled here, and waiters occasionally brushed past with trays of hors d'oeuvres. Table 17. I looked at the name card again. It wasn't a mistake. I pulled out the chair, sat, and tried not to let the sour taste in my mouth turn into bitterness. But even a man trained in war zones feels something when his own family forgets who he is. From across the room, I could see my younger brother Ethan in a designer tuxedo, standing beside his glowing new bride, Emily. The spotlight bathed them in gold as our father, Richard Carter, gave a toast so enthusiastic the crowd erupted in applause. Laughter echoed off the marble floors, champagne flowed, and the ballroom felt like a tribute to everything I was not. "He's the eldest, right?" someone whispered at the next table. "The one still in the military?" I kept my expression still. A woman in pearls leaned closer to her husband. "Such a shame. With his pedigree, he could have been on the board by now." They weren't being cruel. Not intentionally. They were just speaking what everyone here believed, that Will Carter had wasted his life in some dusty barracks, polishing boots and following orders. What none of them knew, what no one in this room bothered to ask, was that I held the rank of Major General in the United States Army. I oversaw cyber defense operations that protected millions. I'd testified before Congress. I'd shaken hands with NATO generals. But none of that was in the wedding program. No one announced my arrival, no slideshow of my work, just table 17 and an invisible name. The truth is, I hadn't come for validation. I came for my mother. I promised I'd be there for Ethan's big day. She was the only one who still called, still asked if I was eating enough, still sent me care packages with socks like I was 20 again. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt. Back at the estate later that night, I passed by the family photo wall in the living room. There was Ethan, receiving his MBA from Wharton. Dad, shaking hands with the Secretary of Defense at a contract signing, even a dog in a Christmas sweater. But not one photo of me. Not a single medal, not the NATO award, not the time I briefed the White House on cyber infiltration protocols. I paused at the fireplace. A smaller photo sat on the shelf. I picked it up. All four of us, when I was 10 and Ethan was 6. Dad's arm was around my shoulders. Back then, he used to say things like, "Do what's right, even if the world turns its back." I lived by that. But when I chose the Army over joining his company, he didn't just turn his back. He erased me. The next morning, over a quiet breakfast, he didn't ask about the wedding or how I was. Instead, he sipped his black coffee and said, "Still playing soldier, Will?" I smiled tightly. "Still serving my country, Dad." He gave a half chuckle. "One day you'll realize real power comes from owning the game, not guarding the door." I set down my fork. "I'm not guarding anything, Dad," I said calmly. "But in 1 week, I'll be at Dynatech's board meeting." His brow furrowed. "Why?" I stood up. "Let's just say it's a matter of national security." As I walked away, his voice followed me. "Don't play games, Will." I didn't answer. But the next time we saw each other, I wouldn't be wearing a suit. I'd be wearing the uniform he never respected, and this time, I wouldn't need an introduction. If you've ever been overlooked after giving your all, type 1. The moment I stepped into the glass-paneled boardroom, the room froze like someone had cut the power. It wasn't just the military dress uniform I wore, navy blue with polished insignia and gold buttons. It was the title behind it. Major General William Carter, U.S. Army Cyber Command. Not one of them had expected that name to appear on the Project Helios approval file, let alone walk through their doors holding it. My father, Richard Carter, sat at the far end of the conference table in his signature gray suit, brows raised in disbelief. My brother Ethan, seated beside him, stared at his tablet screen like it had just betrayed him. The same brother who once called me just a soldier now couldn't seem to meet my eyes. Robert Callahan, the chairman of Dynatech and one of the few people in the room who actually knew who I was, stood up. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, tapping the table lightly, "this is the military liaison assigned to Project Helios. The final decision lies in his hands." He turned to me with a respectful nod. "Major General William Carter." Whispers burst like sparks around the room. Executives leaned in, flipping through folders, checking badges. My father cleared his throat but said nothing. I took my seat at the head of the table, adjusted my folder, and began without a smile. Let's start with the cost breakdown for Helios. Specifically, the $47 million routed to your Singapore subsidiary. It's not accounted for in any of the operational justifications. I looked straight at Ethan. He blinked, then forced a grin. "Auxiliary research," he said quickly. "Advanced threat simulation. Nothing out of the ordinary." "Is there a deliverable report? Any testing metrics?" A pause. "Not on hand," he muttered, eyes darting toward Elena Hayes, Dynatech's lead counsel, seated at the far end. Elena leaned forward. "We'll compile the necessary documentation within 48 hours. I nodded, my voice calm. "You'll need to. The Department of Defense doesn't fund projects with fuzzy numbers." Robert nodded solemnly beside me. He's right. I flipped the next page in my binder. Now onto the encryption protocol. Our penetration testing flagged a flaw in the primary authentication layer. A breach through that layer could compromise the system in under 90 seconds. One of the engineers gasped audibly. Ethan clenched his fists, still trying to wear the calm face of a CFO, but his jaw twitched. "We'll initiate a patch," he said, voice tight. I leaned back. Good, because the Pentagon doesn't approve billion-dollar contracts on verbal promises. My father finally spoke. "Major General," he corrected himself stiffly. "You could have warned us. Come to us quietly." I met his eyes, no emotion in mine. "You wouldn't have listened. You didn't when I sent photos of my promotion. You didn't when I invited you to my NATO ceremony. You only hear the language of control." A long silence fell across the boardroom. No one moved. Ethan looked up at me, face pale. "So, what now?" I closed my folder slowly, letting the moment settle. "Now, you clean your books, secure your systems, and prove that this project deserves federal trust. Because I'm not here as your brother. I'm here as the wall between you and national disaster." I stood. "General Carter," Elena said carefully, "if there are further questions—" "There will be. In writing. Within 48 hours." As I walked out, I didn't look back. But I heard my father sigh. And I knew the weight of that moment would haunt him. Back in the elevator, I stared at my reflection in the gold-trimmed mirror. No applause, no welcome, just truth. They had finally seen the man they erased from their family photos. And I had just reminded them, I don't need a seat at their table. I bring the entire table with me. If you've ever been dismissed until you showed your full strength, type 2. The internal memo hit my inbox at 6:07 a.m. sharp. Subject, Acknowledgement of Leadership. From Richard Carter, CEO, Dynatech Systems. To all staff, CC, Major General William Carter. I want to publicly recognize the leadership and integrity of Major General William Carter, whose expertise in cyber defense and national security has not only guided Project Helios, but reminded us of the importance of truth, discipline, and accountability. I underestimated him, and I was wrong. We are proud to have his oversight. I froze. My father, the man who once scoffed at my barracks lifestyle, had just broadcasted his apology to the entire company. My name, my rank, my worth, were no longer secrets tucked behind military walls. He said it plainly. Proud. I picked up the phone and called him. For the first time in years, he answered on the first ring. "Will," he said, voice unusually steady. "You got the memo?" I did. A pause. "I meant it. I've been blind for a long time. Come home when you're ready. Your mother misses you. I'll come soon, I replied quietly. Thanks for seeing me. Click. A week later, I stepped back into the Carter estate. The air felt different, warmer, realer. My mother rushed toward me in the foyer, wrapped her arms around me before I could even close the door. I made apple pie, she whispered, eyes misty. Your favorite. We ate dinner that night with no talk of deals or rankings. Ethan was there too, humbled, quieter, but no longer cold. He clapped me on the back like he used to as a teenager. No meetings this time, Will, he said with a grin. Just family. After dinner, I wandered into the living room. The photo wall had changed. Between my father's Forbes cover and Ethan's Wharton diploma was a new frame. A photo of me in uniform receiving my NATO medal. Below it, a plaque simply read, William Carter, U.S. Army. Service, honor, leadership. I stared at it for a long moment. Who hung this? I asked. My father appeared behind me. I did, he said. It was long overdue. We sat in silence for a bit before he spoke again. You didn't need to walk into that boardroom in uniform to make me see, but I'm glad you did. I forgot what real strength looks like. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Respect isn't always given. Sometimes you have to take it. He nodded, then smiled faintly. Still won't join the company? I already lead one, I said simply. Ethan later pulled me aside. The cost errors were on me. You could have wrecked me in that room. I shrugged. I don't believe in burning my own house down just to prove I built a better one. He looked at me like he'd never heard me speak before. Thank you, he said, for giving me a chance to fix it. 2 days later, a letter appeared in my suitcase, handwritten, folded carefully beneath my uniform. Willie, I'm proud of you. Not because you're a general, but because you're my son. Mom, I kept that letter next to my medal on my Pentagon desk. Respect didn't come easily. Not in this house, not in the boardroom, and certainly not in the shadows of billion-dollar empires. But I didn't chase it anymore. I built it. And the next time they questioned my worth, I wouldn't need to wear a uniform to remind them. If you've ever had to take respect because no one gave it to you, type 3.